to see Stephanie here and Bria as well. Spirit of 1776, good to see you, and Pauline Buckles as well. There may be a really interesting guest on maybe tomorrow, maybe later this week. Someone that I sort of went on my true crime journey with for many years. I actually co-wrote quite a few books with her, and she's actually got a lot to say about this trial as well. What is quite interesting, when I asked her about it, I mean, it's the first time I've spoken to her in months, just really asked her, what's your opinion? And she said, I'm probably the only American who didn't watch the trial. And she said she saw clips here and there, but didn't really have the desire to watch, in her words, two self-indulgent celebs. She just said there are far bigger issues in the world. And that was exactly my approach as well. It was like, I think I was actually on holiday when the case started. And I was like, I actually told someone, no, I'm not going to be covering that. It's sort of below my pay grade. And I still feel that way. It's not the kind of stuff that I normally cover. I actually spoke to or tweeted with someone from another true crime channel who said, this isn't true crime. Although I think it qualifies, I kind of get where she's coming from. It's sort of not quite our usual deal, right? Good to see some of our members joining in. Esenko Belinsky, not there yet. Terry Dean, good to see all of you guys. 73 Celine Taco. Okay, I don't know where you guys come up with these avatars. G-Man Nisi, good to see you as well. So in terms of the poll question is, if you were a member of the jury, and I see we've got 127 votes so far, hopefully we can get up to about 200. If you were a member of the jury, could you have gone 6 weeks without looking at any social media? So another way of kind of putting that is just, could you go for 6 weeks without looking at social media? Forget about if you're a member of the jury. Could you go for 6 weeks without looking at social media? Now, with regards to those who said yes, if there's any of you there that said yes, and I'm the first person to put up my hand and say, if I'd been a juror, if I am a juror, if I was in that position, I would really want to do my job. I would want to not be biased. I would want to listen in a what's the word, in a blank canvas type scenario, and you know what I mean. And but the fact is that jurors were allowed to keep their phones. The fact is the case went on for 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks, and you've got your phone every single day. And I'm going to talk about what Amber Heard's attorney said about this fact as well. But it's not just you saying, I elect not to look at this case. You must remember the algorithm is going to find you. So, what I found with YouTube was sending me all sort of recommendations. And as far as I know, it's the first time I've ever had to tell YouTube, not interested, not interested, not interested. Like, I actually don't want these notifications. I don't know if I've ever had to, on previous notifications, kind of say, don't send me this, In the past, I would just scroll through, but this was literally a case where I just say, can you please stop sending me this? I really am not interested in this. And so you can also have passive exposure. You can have passive exposure to social media, which is, for example, you open YouTube and maybe you want to watch the highlights of the tennis or a movie trailer or just anything else. Well, YouTube is going to be telling you, showing you what's sort of triggering everybody else, what's activating their algorithm, right? And so they're going to say, we recommend this, we recommend that, and you're going to see it. You can't help seeing the title of the video in order to know whether to look at it or not. But once you've looked at it, you've looked at it. Nisi says, I can't stand the algorithm. You know, there was a time when I worked as a full-time true crime author, right? And I also couldn't stand the algorithm because I was trying to sometimes search for information, and I was like, don't give me the information you think I want. Give me the information in a vanilla way, and I'll decide what I want to get. And do you get what I'm saying? In other words, I was trying to remove Google's bias to say, you know, stop giving me what you think I want to see, and just give me the vanilla version, and I will look at it and decide what I think I want to read. You don't decide for me, kind of thing. But that's now part of the algorithm. And so once you go down that route where you say, it just reinforces itself from there onwards. So just think about it from just a normal perspective. If you have a Twitter account, if you are on YouTube, you are going to get a sort of a passive or indirect exposure to this stuff, whether you want to or not, right? So the odds of you being able to successfully avoid it are about 0%, right? And I think in that respect, this trial was quite naive. I think there were so many opportunities for social media exploration. There was a 10-day break in the middle of the case. There was also a sort of 3-day long weekend right before the verdict. So if you manage to hold out for, just under 6 weeks, you know, if you actually made it that far. Now it's jury time. Now it's your turn to do something. Well, there's just one more long weekend to not look at social media. Do you think you wouldn't? And then there's the other aspect, which is if by some miracle you have managed to filter everything out and you've just not managed to see anything, what about your family? What about your friends? Is not one of them going to make a comment here or there and something's going to slip through? When you turn on your television, is that not going to come up somewhere? When you look at a news feed, if you're on Facebook or whatever, is that not going to come up there? If you go onto Twitter, you're not going to see hashtag Amber Turd, hashtag whatever, just by virtue of just going onto Twitter. No, I don't want to read. I don't want to read anything about the trial. Well, problem is the trial is everywhere. Right? Even if you didn't want to read about the trial, it's there. That was my experience. It's like, I'm not really interested. Well, I was on holiday there, it was on television. I come home, I'm looking at my YouTube, and part of my work is being on YouTube. There are all these recommendations. So I think you've got to think about, if you say, could you have gone 6 weeks without looking at any social media? That's a little bit like saying, could you have gone 6 weeks without looking at your phone? Do you think if you had your phone, like someone said, here's your phone, all you want to do is not look at it for 6 weeks and I'll give you $1 million. Do you think you could do it? I think some people could do it, but anyway, if we take this poll to be representative, almost half of you say you couldn't do it, right? Almost half of you. That's already significant. That's already very significant. Nisi says we're an addicted society now. I think that's absolutely true. When I go on holiday, because I'm a content creator. When I go on holiday, even when I take my dog for a walk, I don't take my phone with me. When I go on holiday, I do take my phone with me, but I try not to do anything. And it's sometimes difficult not to. On the last holiday I went, my girlfriend was supposed to join me. She didn't make it. And within a few days, I was putting up a couple of YouTube videos. So in other words, I was working while on holiday. But of course, if you've got a lot of time on your own, how hard or easy is it to make a short kind of thing? This friend of mine that I spoke to said, this case, Depp versus Heard, is like the poster child for the state of our world right now. Don't you think that's so true? She also said it's kind of a poster child for the state of America right now. And if that's true, we're in trouble. If that's true, not only are we in trouble, but it's getting worse. And I think one's got to kind of ask the question, if this is happening, how do you stop it? If Pandora is getting out the box, how do you close the box again? And I think something else that she said that's really interesting is she said, social media has destroyed us as a society, right? Destroyed our ability to be a democracy, our ability to be tolerant of one another, our ability to be civil to one another, our ability to be respectful, our ability to listen, our ability to pay attention. Is Cotton Star here? I think Cotton Star is in. Anyway, I think it's not just that social media has destroyed us as society, but that it's continuing to destroy us. So it's already destroyed society, the fabric of society, but that destruction isn't finished, it's continuing. And so you've got to kind of ask, what can we do? It's almost like the war in Ukraine. Like the war is going on, what can we do? Like what sort of defense options do we have, kind of thing. And then another thing that I think is definitely worth thinking about, and whether or not you want to think this is relevant to the Depp versus Heard trial, just generally, how do we prevent juries from being tainted in the future? So if you say the verdict in this case is absolutely 100% correct, right? Let's say you say that. Then you say, but I do know there was quite a lot of social media, right? Billions of hashtag this and whatever, literally billions, I think almost 20 billion hashtag justice for Johnny Depp, right? That's like almost 3 times the population of the earth. If you're talking about 20 billion, it's like almost 3 times the population of earth. Every single person sort of going to a hashtag 3 times kind of thing. In any event, if you say, I think social media is kind of a thing, maybe we need to help juries out. What do you think the answer is to that? Do we take away their phones? Do we put them in like a cubicle where they are like in solitary confinement? So it's almost like a jail sentence. One of the things I've thought about is literally, and it sounds, I know, crazy, but artificial intelligence. The same way computers decide what content we should consume, and I guess do such a good job that we are hopelessly addicted, couldn't artificial intelligence be used to do all those collations, collate all of the facts, and again, using an algorithm, look at the how the law works and how this particular set of circumstances fits in with the legal algorithm. And so you have a dispassionate, logical entity making up its mind in a way that is got that sort of machine-like scientific lack of bias, right? I suppose in the very far future, you could even have machines that can say, okay, what you said there wasn't true. Like a very, very high level of somebody said during this trial, why are people not automatically connected to a lie detector because they're not accurate? But what if you could get them to be sufficiently accurate, right? I also want to say, I'm not sitting here to say I'm not team anything. I'm not team Johnny, and I'm not team Amber. I'm not team anything. And that's also not to say that I thought Amber's testimony was entirely convincing. I think one of the least convincing things she said was that this particular image wasn't edited or enhanced. I'm a photographer. I think she even said something like, I've never photoshopped an image. I'm not sure if that's verbatim, but she said something like, anyway, and it clearly was. But to me, the issue isn't so much was the image altered, but what is the original image? What do you see in the original image? And this is where I think true crime rocket science sees things a little bit further than maybe a lot of other people. You can understand human nature where you say, I think I would really want to go and look online. There's so much pressure. This is such a high profile case. What are people actually thinking? I would like to know, right? Think about the other side. If you were a juror, and let's just say for sake of argument, you thought Amber was innocent in this. And then you went online and you saw like the whole of America was against Amber. Would you feel, but I'm just saying for the sake of argument, would you feel you had complete freedom to make your decision without any fear? Like, so let's say you thought, okay, I actually feel this way. Shucks, I went on the internet and I see everybody disagrees, but anyway, I'm going to vote the way that I feel because that's the right thing. Do you think if you were in the juror's shoes and you knew about the shitstorm on social media, do you think you would say, I don't really mind voting this way. I don't mind if my identity is revealed. I don't mind if the same thing happens to me that happened to Amber Heard. I don't mind if I get mocked and ridiculed and everything else. I don't mind. Well, most people would mind. And so that's certainly a kind of a coercion that's out there, right? Team Truth, good to see you, choice. Certified Quality says, I heard Amber wants to appeal. That is definitely true. She does. She is. I think let's go to that, some of the latest news. And this is kind of a statement from her attorney. I think it was published on People magazine. So, this particular live stream is sort of to ask the question, could the jurors have been influenced by social media, right? And that's something I thought about independently. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see that, but it's also something I came across in a lot of different mainstream media articles, in the Washington Post, just probably 4 or 5 different separate articles. The same thing was mentioned. In any event, Amber Heard's attorney believes that jurors were influenced by social media either directly or indirectly. And this is a quote from what she says. She appeared on the Today Show. Breda Hoft went into detail on the Today Show about why she believes social media influenced the court case for the worse, right? And she said, absolutely, she thinks strong opinions from fans affected the jurors. And then she says, how can you not think that? She went on to say, and I think this is a very interesting way of just being practical about it. You don't have to sort of demonize or attack or criticize the jurors, right? The fact is, and this is Breedhoft's words, quote, they went home every night. They had families, and families are on social media. They had a 10-day break in the middle of it because of the judicial conference. There's no way they couldn't have been influenced by it. and it was horrible. It was really was lopsided. She's talking about the social media influence, and it was 99%, if not 100%, Team Johnny, right? And so their families would kind of be Team Johnny by extension. And then Brederhoff sort of ended up saying it was like the Roman Colosseum, how they viewed this case. And if you think about the Roman Colosseum, it's this big sort of structure, and all the people sit in it, and they are sort of baying for blood. They've decided who their champion is, and they are sort of salivating and shouting and spitting and throwing things, and they are sort of taking this sadistic pleasure in someone being literally torn to shreds in the arena. And that's what they want to see. They want to see the destruction of one, and they want to see the one emerge as a hero and the other one emerge as a villain, right? They want that sort of transactionality. I'm enjoying the fact that you are winning, but even more so, I'm enjoying the fact that you losing and being torn apart. I'm enjoying it. Do it more. Let's. How can it be even more cruel? Okay, bring in a lion. Take another weapon that's got this and that and that. It's literally like the Colosseum, and this isn't like to be like nasty and judgmental. The Roman Colosseum is part of our civilized backstory history. It's part of who we are. And it's just showing how much we've regressed. It's the, it's the year 2022, and they're talking about this court case felt like being in a Colosseum with gladiators. It's something that happened like 2,000 years ago. I was actually in a Colosseum in France. I was in one, and you realize it was a totally different time. Well, now we're back there, just with cell phone Colosseums in our hands, cell phones that give us a ticket to the Colosseum, right? And the roar is like a digital roar. It's a digital deluge of hashtags, right? So that is the position of her attorney. And something that I thought was definitely interesting was when Johnny Depp's attorneys thanked, I don't know, the public or one another. One of the things they said was something about how much they appreciated that this case resonated with the public. So they also were fully aware of what is going on social media as well. To say that we really liked the way that this case resonated with social media, with the public. It is, I think, very interesting that they never issued any admonition that's going a bit too far. Please don't do that. I think Amber Heard said that she was getting certain kind of threats. Why not just put up your hand and say, please, that is going too far, that's not necessary. It didn't happen. Also in the court, the judge didn't sort of go, can we have a bit of respect for what's going on here? Can we stop giggling and, all of that stuff? You kind of got the feeling that the judge let it go. Maybe she thought it was a fait accompli. She knew what was kind of going to happen, what inevitably was going to happen. I've got to tell you, in many high-profile cases I've covered, trial by media comes up so often in appeals, it's almost a cliche. I think it was part of Oscar Pistorius. I think it was part of Jodi Arias. But it's pretty much par for the course for any high-profile case. You say the media narrative had an impact. Well, in DEPP versus HEARD, the trial by TikTok, which, as absurd as it sounds, that's exactly what it was. A trial by TikTok engulfed all trial by medias I've ever seen. It was bigger than any media narrative I've ever seen associated with a high-profile case. And in fact, I think I'd go so far as to say, if you kind of bunched up all the trial by medias that I've ever seen and threw it all together, it would still be 10% of this trial by TikTok that we saw here. Think about what you're talking about. 19 billion hashtag justice for Johnny Depp. So it's a heck of a lot of traffic. The other thing is that the trial by TikTok dwarfed the trial itself, right? It has to, including the media narrative. Can I just ask a question? How many of you guys read any mainstream media news coverage of this case? I just would be interested to see. So if you read anything like in the news, just say yes. And if you didn't read a single news story, everything you consumed was YouTube videos or tweets or something, then say no. Did any of you read anything that was in the mainstream media? Sunflower says, did social media influence the UK trial? That's a great question. Choi says yes, but very little. Great answer. Thanks for that. Thanks for your honesty. So quite a few did read. Louise said, I read everything. It was fascinating. Deza B says no. Another person says no. Person Kitty. Alicia says, I read news stories when it first came out and listened to some audio. Still Pearl says nope. So I'm going to take you guys through some of the news stories that I read that really resonated with me. I'm a journalist, so that tends to be my way of getting information and educating myself. I've always got high standards for myself in terms of sources, and that doesn't mean that certain sources that are, let's say, not that credible, doesn't mean that they're never credible. But I think it's something that's always quite important is what is your source material? Baby Shark says, I think this is our reality. There's no way a high-profile case is ever going to be tried in social media before a court of law. Cynthia Nielsen says, I only watched LawTube videos put on by legitimate, unbiased lawyers. So I think that's quite a good point. I'm going to come back to what Sunflower said. I know of at least 3 channels, and I'm not yet to attack other people or other channels or other creators, but I know of 3 other channels that describe themselves as literally with these words, we unbiased, fact-driven. And I don't know if you guys know what those words mean. To be unbiased means that you don't take up a position and you are basically neutral, basically like the judge in the Amber Heard case. You step aside and you don't make it obvious what your position is, even if you may have a preference, right? You are very disciplined in terms of maintaining neutrality. And yet I saw quite a lot of these same channels that claim to be fact-driven pushing the pro-Johnny stuff. And it makes total sense. Why? Because that's where you would get support. You get online support, you get positive feedback. I didn't really cover the case until Johnny Depp started testifying. Even then, I didn't really get into it much until Amber Heard testified. Then I started paying a bit more attention to it. But I also got sucked into the ugliness of it and the worrying cultural battleground, the social media mongrelization that was taking place, which I found really, really concerning. And it's something that I find really interesting is I think a lot of the people who support Johnny Depp couldn't give a crap about that aspect. They couldn't give, it's almost like you're so busy, you're so caught up in the theater. It's almost like you're in the Colosseum and you're so enjoying the spectacle that someone's saying to you, well, do you know this is actually cruelty to animals? Or do you know that this and that? It's like, stop interrupting me. I'm really enjoying this. So in other words, the ethical thing is totally off the agenda. And let's face it, a trial isn't the Roman Colosseum gladiators. A trial is supposed to be civilized reasoning. But out there in social media land, it definitely isn't. Out there in social media land, it is as cruel, as savage, as monstrous as it possibly can be, to the roars of everybody. That's where we are. Someone says, does anyone know why cameras were allowed in? Well, it is something that happens quite a lot, certainly in America. One of the main reasons is transparency. If you can't prove that the case is going to jeopardize the testimony or influence the testimony, then why not? What's wrong with that? I've been a proponent of cameras in the court for a really, really long time, and I've got to admit, sadly, that I don't support that anymore. I think there are certain cases where you might want it, where it's high profile, but there's not going to be the same level of animus. But overall, I would say I don't think it's a good idea. Social media has changed the landscape. And you're going to now have problems where every time you're going to say, could the jury have been tainted by social media, especially if it was overwhelming? It could be overwhelmingly true even. In other words, the social media could be right. It's still not allowing the jurors to independently, neutrally examine the facts. So let's say you committed murder, right? Let's say you definitely committed murder and you're on trial for murder, and everyone on social media says murderer, 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 and the juries see that, and you did commit murder, and they see that and they say, okay, well, so that is the popular belief, okay, so you committed murder. That's not how justice should work, right? It should work in the proper way. It shouldn't be a popularity contest. HI says the phone is stolen away, the job of the court, and even the court illustrators. Okay, so I see we are up to 44% no's, 240 of you voted. Let's see if it goes up to 50% or even higher. By the way, it's unfortunate that I can't vote, but yeah, I can't vote, so I can't influence the poll. Sarah Glenn says, I never said she filed criminal complaint. The question is, why didn't she if it was true? I actually had this conversation with someone who I know went through this for real. And I said, in the course of and she was married, I think for 4 years. And I said, did you ever go to the police? And she said, I went to them twice. And I said, so what happened? She said, the one time I went to the police and I stood in front of the building and I never went in. And then the second time she went in and that was the end of her marriage. And I think anybody, you can understand that, like ending a marriage is something you do as a last resort, right? So that's true of somebody that I know. So I don't know. Noel K. Cho says, our branch is about lying and playing. You'll never receive the truth from an actor. So that's the other thing that I think's quite a dilemma in this case. Put yourself in Amber Heard's shoes. If you don't cry, I don't know if you guys remember this. When she was testifying, there was this, I just remember the chat going nuts and I eventually turned it off. But I remember the chat going nuts and it was like, why aren't you crying? Where are the tears? You know what I mean? And so it was like, and I also felt she's talking about some pretty hectic things. So I was also thinking, shouldn't she be crying? But does that then apply to Johnny Depp? Johnny Depp didn't ever cry, but that I guess doesn't matter. Okay, so Amber must cry. Then when she does cry, it's not real. And to be honest, my feeling was I think she did overact. I did think she wasn't particularly credible quite often, but I also felt like there were times where I thought she was credible. There were times when she was emotional where I thought that sounds it sounds credible. Also, to me, what I just found really ugly and nasty is when she does actually cry and there are actually tears coming down her face, whether those are manufactured tears or not, she's still ridiculed. So it's like if you cry, you damned, and if you don't cry, you're also damned. So what are you supposed to do? But like the fact is, there were actual tears coming down her face if you were paying attention. But obviously in the social media world, if you say there are no tears, then even if there are tears, there are no tears. If enough people say there are no tears, then there are no tears. It's not reality, but it's social media reality. And that's why it's pretty troubling. But can you see the dilemma? You know, to me, the tear thing is the same thing as the photo thing. So you say, something happened to me and I've got to try and convey it to you in a way that's going to convince you, right? And maybe all of it isn't convincing, but maybe some of it is convincing. But anyway, I'm going to convey this to you that's convincing. You need me to cry to be convinced, so I cry, but you're still not convinced. You have the same thing with a photo where you've got a bruise on your face, but it's not really a really sort of severe bruise. So it's the same thing. I need to convince you that there's a bruise, but you're not convinced. And the thing is, that it's not that there's no bruise, it's just not bad enough for you to say, oh, that's quite a bad bruise. That doesn't mean the bruise isn't there. It just means that you saying to me that doesn't qualify, right? Yeah, Jody is cool. Says I looked for tears, I didn't see it. I think I put that on my community page where I said, "Do you see any tears?" And I put a video where in the video you actually see the tears, not photos, the live video, the original video. And I think quite a few people unsubscribed from that. Like, don't tell me something that I disagree with. I unsubscribe. So it's like, okay, that's the reward you get for pointing that out. I'm actually looking at my channel stats at the moment. I'm expecting it to go under 86,400. So when I started this, I was at around about just under 800. So I lost about 400 subscribers. If you are watching this particular live stream and you appreciate what we're talking about, the manner in which we discuss this, without the emotion, without the sensation, without the rah, 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 team this, team that, if you appreciate where we're coming from, please make use of the thanks button. It won't be visible now, but once the live is finished, you'll be able to express your appreciation. I have definitely lost subscribers as a result of covering this trial, but that's what makes me different to a lot of other channels. I'm prepared to stand by my truth, even though it sort of hurts me. I'm prepared to say something that's unpopular, but something that I nevertheless strongly believe is true. And now I want to go over to those articles that deal with journalists talking about, not social media journalists, not experts on YouTube. I've heard this quite a lot, that there's this world-class expert, but he's on YouTube. There's this incredible lawyer who knows the law, but he's on YouTube. In other words, as soon as you're on YouTube, you're going to be incentivized to tell a particular narrative. You're going to make money but telling a particular narrative. That's the difference. On the other hand, you're going to be punished if you tell another narrative that most people aren't agreeing with at that time. So just bear that in mind. It's not like I'm an expert, so I know exactly what's going on. Timmy, can I put you down? Cotton Star, good to see you. And Lisa, if you're watching, I hope we're going to get to talk to you. Courtney Messick says, it's shocking to me there's people that actually support and believe Amber, though. To me, it was obvious she was lying. So, Courtney, then you must be shocked by the jurors, because the jurors found partially in her favor. So, you'd be shocked at the jurors who sat there. And it wasn't like a clean sweep, although it pretty much amounts to that. Let's just do a quick, what do you call it, a quick test of the, what's the word, brain power of our chat. Actually says, I'm staying only standing back. Okay. The jurors did not believe there was a hoax. That's true. Yeah, I must say, I think a lot of people think that every single photo was doctored, every single scene of those 14 incidents, every single text, then every single detail is a lie. All of it. That definitely takes some doing to go that route. Anyway, the jurors didn't think that. Thanks, Margaret. Zircon says, but she won against a lawyer's words. Rock Girl says, appreciate your view. Okay, so at the moment we're up to 43% saying no. Okay, so Lisa is in chat. Good to see you, Lisa. We might actually be chatting to Lisa maybe tomorrow. Maybe even later tonight as a part 2 to this. But yeah, I'd really like an American voice talking about the American cultural battlefield that's taking place. Someone actually called it a cultural war. It definitely is that. It definitely is that. And that's why it's really worth paying attention to. If you don't care about Johnny Depp or Amber Heard, and to be honest, I don't particularly myself. I do care about justice, and I care about truth, and I care about the law. What this shows is that the law can become irrelevant. The law can become impotent. The law can become a circus, and that's not right. In a civilized society, that's not right. So this trial by TikTok dwarfed the trial itself, including the media narrative. The media, a lot of you say, you didn't even bother to read any news stories. But don't worry, I got my news from experts on YouTube, which are incentivized to peddle a particular narrative. So in case you were wondering, yes, the mainstream media also covered this trial, even if they spent a disproportionate amount of effort pointing out the scale and scope of the social media carnival taking place. And eventually I kind of just tuned out. You'd read article after article that would say, hashtag justice for Johnny's now got so many billion. And eventually it was like, yeah, I know, I've read that before. And you just start tuning that out. So I want to take you into the strategy that is often used on jurors. It's called DAVO. Have any of you guys heard of that? Have any of you guys heard of the DAVO strategy? Do you guys know what DAVO stands for? Louise says no. Cheated no more says yes. Okay, a couple of you said no. So I'm actually going to a fantastic article, and it's this article that actually prompted me to make this particular live stream. It's an article from the Washington Post. The Washington Post is the publication that published the original op-ed. I found a lot of the analysis in the Washington Post really interesting. I also find it quite sort of weird that it was probably a Washington Post editor that chose that the headline that Amber chosen. Essentially, the worst part of the whole article is the headline, which he didn't even choose. So the person responsible should actually be the Washington Post editor. And bear in mind, the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, so why wouldn't you sue him as well? When Depp sued The Sun, he sued the guy who wrote the article and the publication. In this case, he doesn't sue the Washington Post. Why not? I also wonder what Jeff Bezos's position is. Is he paying any attention to this? I would imagine he is. Is he supportive of one or the other? I would imagine he would be. Would he be providing any financial assistance to anybody? I don't know, right? Choice is, how political was the verdict? It turned out to be very political, even more political than I think was intended. But anyway, the Washington Post asked this question: why did Johnny Depp lose his libel case in the UK? Why did Johnny lose his libel case in England, but he won in the US, right? Why did he lose? And in fact, he lost it twice. He not only lost the original case, he also lost the appeal. Why is that? And that was kind of my reasoning from the beginning, was, without even knowing too much about the case, I was like, well, if the law worked in England, it'll probably work in America, right? In other words, the basic legal paradigm is the basic legal paradigm. And so, surprise, surprise, that wasn't the case. The law apparently in America is totally, totally different to the law in the UK. Do you really believe that? Let me ask you that again. Do you believe that the law in England, and bear in mind, America is a former colony of of Great Britain, so its law derives from English law, right? Do you really believe that the law in England is totally different to America? See what you guys say. Ricardo, good to see you. US law is based on British law to some extent. Yeah, so Pauline, I don't know if you read the article, but the article goes on to say that the difference is quite simple. In the UK, a judge decided on this, so a legally educated person, and in America, laymen and women, ordinary folk that are not legally minded, voted on this. So that's the difference. Judge in one country, jury in another country. And I think you can then ask the question. So let me ask you guys the question. If you accept that, and I'll go through the article in a little bit more detail in a moment, do you think the outcome to this case would have been different if instead of an American jury, there was a judge? In other words, if a judge decided the outcome. Let's see what you guys say. Bad Cactus says every incident was a movie scene or someone else's story. Okay. So the whole thing's fiction. It is all an elaborate hoax. Bruce says absolutely yes. Different, yes. Some people say no. It was okay. Terry Dean says possibly. Actually says no idea. Louise says don't know. So there are cases where judges make errors. It happens all the time. I just think judges may perhaps make fewer errors than juries. I don't know. Did the juries in the O.J. Simpson case come to the right conclusion? Think about the social pressure surrounding that case at the time. The riots in LA. Think about that. Think about in the Casey Anthony case. Did the jurors, I'm asking a question, did the jurors, do you think, understand the legal possibilities in the case? And I think I've written 2 books on the Casey Anthony case. I seem to remember someone saying that they didn't know that there were like subdivisions for culpability. I think they sort of said it was either all or nothing. She was either guilty or innocent. There couldn't be that you did this or that or that. And it's like, wow, did somebody not explain it to you? Right? I do think there's a real question to ask, and KD says it there, weren't the jurors afraid of the mob? Can you imagine if you did vote a particular way, then you're now going to be targeted because you're now also, I don't know, whatever. You're going to face the same cancelling that Amber Heard faced, right? Karen Combs says the judge should be forced to live with Depp. You broke it, you bought it. Okay. Stephanie says, reading your differing point of view. Thanks for chat being respectful. You guys are doing a good job so far. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Darvo. And it's from this Washington Post article. I'll put a link in the chat. And it's really interesting. And I want to ask you guys whether you think this wasn't actually the defense strategy, the plaintiff's strategy. And this is the pertinent part that I want to sort of bring up. So this assessment is from a international media lawyer, a guy called Mark Stevens. He knows both cases, meaning the United States case and the British case. So, he's not only a legal expert, but he's a media expert, and also au fait with both trials, the UK and the one in America. And he says, Mark Stevens said, Johnny Depp's legal team ran a strategy known as Darvo. And I thought this is just like this lawyer can say, you know what, I can see what they did. They used Darvo. Darvo is an acronym for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender, right? And so, in other words, Depp becomes the victim and Heard becomes the offender. I'm going to put that acronym in chat so you can see it. Darvo stands for deny, D for deny, attack, reverse the victim and the offender. And let me ask you, do you think that is what happened? Do you think that is what happened? So deny it. So remember, Johnny started off saying, I've never done anything like this. I have never done, I will never do it, or it's just not, I've never ever done it. And then, so that's the denial, right? I've never ever done this, whatever. Then attack. She did this, I'm someone who runs away, and, when I was a little boy, that happened, and I would always sort of run away. So, and then it becomes, she cut off my finger, she did this, she did that, I'm the victim here. And then that became the thing, right? That became the thing. And then it also becomes, so in the middle of this attacking, reverse the victim. I'm the victim here. And you see it in a lot of cases. It's not just this case. You see something like that with Jodi Arias as well. Jodi Arias is the victim. Denial again with everything. No, I wasn't there. Actually, we've got a photo that shows that you were there. Attack, well, Travis did this and that, and whatever. And then, no, I'm actually the victim, and he was attacking me, and I did this in self-defense. Oscar Pistorius, deny, no, I didn't do it. I actually thought I was being attacked. I heard this noise, and so I was trying to just defend myself. I'm the victim here. I thought someone was going to come out and attack me, right? On and on and on, right? And so it's quite an effective thing that's not only been used effectively in this case, it's been effectively used in many cases. Even in the O.J. Simpson case, I think it was, he denied that there'd ever been any incidents. And then he said that, I'm not sure to what extent he said that Nicole attacked him, but I don't know. I did write a couple of books on that case. I don't know the case that well, but it's like he's the victim in this. There was a rush to judgment from the police. And that is done quite often where a skilled, usually defense attorney, but a skilled attorney can make you appear to be the victim. And if you think about that, if you say that was the strategy, that's certainly this expert's position that this was the strategy. But if you do say, okay, this is our strategy, we're going to go the Darvo route, and also we must make Johnny the victim, then what's part of the optics of someone being a victim? Well, they've got to be very the opposite of an offender. So in other words, they speak slowly, they sort of stutter. In other words, there's not confidence and certainty and assertiveness. There's the opposite. There's the sort of stuttering, hesitant, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, of I'm the victim, right? And if you compare just in a very bland way on paper, Johnny Depp's testimony and Amber Heard's testimony, Johnny tended to be slow and almost like right in the beginning, in the very first opening seconds, he sort of seemed to be stuttering and none of it seemed to be going anywhere. But regardless of what he says and how he says it, it kind of comes down to, does this look like a person who loses his temper? Does this look like an angry person? Does this look like a violent person? And so all it comes down to is optics. You see him smiling, you see him hugging, you see him friendly, and you see that all the time. It's repeated, smiling, friendly, hugging, doodling, all harmless things. When he speaks slowly, and he seems like this sensitive, sweet, whimsical character. When you see Amber Heard, she's quite assertive, she's quite emotional, and although she cries, the victim thing is done totally differently. And so I think you've got to ask yourself also whether you are happy about the verdict or whether you're not. You've got to ask whose performance was actually the best? Whose performance convinced the jury? Whose performance didn't convince the jury? And then it's still a performance. They're both actors. So whether you're going to say Amber Heard was a terrible performer, she's a terrible actor, and she lied, well, there you go. But what if she was an excellent performer and an excellent actor, and she lied, but she sort of convinced them? That's not what happened. And then you look at Johnny Depp. Did he put in a performance of a lifetime? Did he perform in a way that the jury thought, wow, I don't really care what he said in those we refer to himself as an effing savage and a monster. I don't really care that he said that. The guy that I see in front of me is just such a nice guy. I just can't believe that he would do that. That's good enough for me. Do you think a judge would see it the same way? Is the person that I see in front of me, he's dressed quite nicely. I never see him not sober. That's good enough for me. You've convinced me. Is a judge going to look at that, at optics, or is a judge going to look at what is actually being said, at the list of contradictions? There was a moment where Ben Rottenborn said there were 13 inconsistencies, or what did he call them? Impeachments. He impeached Johnny Depp's testimony 13 times. on, I don't know if it's 14 incidents but across the incidents in terms of the British case. That's quite a lot. It's quite a lot of things. And I don't think he said that very well. I think another thing the defendant could have done was emphasize that the British court found essentially in Amber's favor, but against Johnny Depp. I don't think that, in other words, say to the jury, this other court, emphasize it, this other court found this, what are you going to do? This other court, this is what they thought, what are you going to do? In other words, they heard this and this was the decision they reached, and there was an appeal and this was the decision they reached. Nisi says, I hope that the judge can ignore optics. In the Oscar Pistorius case, I had the distinct feeling that the judge sort of, I think she had something like tuberculosis or something in her backstory. And so she was actually walking with a limp. She was somewhat, not disabled, but limited in her motion. And I got the feeling that she absolutely felt sorry for Oscar Pistorius and that his whole thing absolutely worked with her. In terms of the Oscar Pistorius, you've got to ask, who's the target of all of this, everything? It's not the media, although the media plays a part. It's not the gallery, although the gallery plays a part. But the target in the end is just that one person, the judge. And that's why he would keep saying, my lady, my lady, my lady. In terms of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, they were frequently looking at the jury, especially Amber Heard, to try and develop rapport. The fact that I heard this from certain YouTube channels, I don't know what to make of it, but they said that there were some jurors who they just weren't looking at Amber Heard anymore. And you sort of wonder, is that because of what they've seen on social media, or is it because they've been convinced in court and they've realized, okay, I'm tuning out, I'm not going to pay attention to you anymore? It just seems a little bit strange that you would kind of make up your mind in the midst of a trial. The whole point of it is that you keep an open mind right until the end. You don't make up your mind in the middle of it. Of course, people are human beings. So I see we're up to 44% of no's. So again, DAVO is an acronym for deny. So it's a well-known strategy: deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. And it says, in the strategy, Depp became the victim and Heard the offender. And then Mark Stevens says, quote, we find that DAVO works very well with juries, but almost never works with judges because they are trained to look at evidence, right? And I think that sums it up absolutely perfectly. DAVO, in other words, deny, attack, reverse the victim, works great with juries because they get emotional and they get caught up in the story and they aren't so preoccupied by evidence. But it doesn't really work with judges. So this strategy doesn't really work with judges, but it works with juries. Do you think it did work with this jury? Do you think DAVO did work with this jury? In other words, invert the whole story. The victim now becomes, I'm the victim. Johnny, can you play the victim in court? Can you play passive, right? If you've watched some roles of Johnny Depp as a pirate, isn't he sometimes quite an active, aggressive figure? But now you must be passive, non-threatening, speak softly and quietly, kind of make a few jokes, smile, don't appear angry, don't get angry, kind of thing. Don't even look at Amber because you are traumatized. And then you're so traumatized, go and play a gig immediately after. All I'm interested in is the truth, but then when the case is being heard, I'm not even in court. My supporters are watching, but I'm actually somewhere else. The other thing is, and this is quoting from the Washington Post. Although Amber Heard was not named in the British case, she testified over several days as a witness called by the Sun. The British judge ultimately ruled that the allegations against Depp were, quote, substantially true. That's kind of been my position all along, like from afar, going into this case. A British judge examined all this and he decided most of this is likely true. And he also said the great majority of the alleged incidents had been proved to the civil standard. Well, guess what? The standard in the UK is higher than in terms of evidence. The standard is higher than in America. So just using logic and legal common sense, you would say, well, the outcome here is pretty obvious. But then it wasn't. And so the article goes on to say, even though the Virginia case had a much higher standard to cross for Depp's team, that didn't impact the outcome, because essentially what you've got is a jury believing evidence that a British judge did not accept. So I guess Johnny's evidence. The jury believed Johnny's evidence, whereas the British judge didn't accept Johnny's evidence, as I understand that. And so they say that's where the difference lies. So this legal expert basically says, don't fuss and fiddle with the British legal system is very different. It's not a case of different legal frameworks. It's a case of, in that case, a judge was asked to evaluate evidence, and in this case, a jury was asked to evaluate evidence. That's the difference. In this case, a judge understands the law and what is part of it, and in this case, a jury doesn't properly fill out the forms, asks, do we need to look at the title of this thing, and kind of comes up with this weird double thing where, this is the question I want to ask you guys. Let's see how smart you guys are. What is the total amount, and think about this quite carefully, do the full equation. What is the total amount Amber Heard, the way things stand right now, has to pay Johnny Depp? Let's see how many of you guys get it right. So I'll make it a bit easier for you. Is it 15 million? Is it $10.35 million, or is it something else? Let me put it down. So how much does Amber owe Johnny? Is it 15 million? That's your first option. Is it 10.35 million? And that's based on the punitive damages. So someone says 12 million. Someone says 8 million. But most of you look like you've got your head screwed on right. Yeah, the right amount is 8.35 million. It's basically 10 million plus 3.5 million minus 2 million. That's 8.35 million. So that's the actual amount. So again, you've got to ask yourself, how well do you know the arithmetic of this case? You may think you know some of it, but do you know it to the actual amount? And I saw quite a few stories and tweets saying 15 million, whatever, and the actual amount is actually 8.35 million. It's 10 million plus $350,000. That's the cap. The jury were told this. You can't give more punitive damages than $355,000. That is the cap in the state of Virginia. And even so, they put it up as 5 million. So they didn't pay attention to that. That's showing legal ignorance, legal being a legal layman, right? Yeah, I'm not going to really go into nitpicking too much more than that. I want to now go into something else here. Just in terms of the coverage from the media. So Okay, so let's start with, so this one, in no way did this trial do what defamation law is supposed to do, protect anyone's reputation. I thought that was another excellent article. Just opening it up here. That came from Slate magazine. I thought that was also a fantastic comment. So again, think about what we're talking about. These two people are on trial, both of them. Johnny's on trial, Amber's on trial, and the issue being argued is defamation, right? And so what's defamation law supposed to do? Why are they in court? Well, the law is supposed to operate in court, and the law is supposed to say, I'm going to protect your reputation. We are here to protect your reputation. And so in the midst of this case, that's about, well, the law doing its job to protect your reputation. Well, we're now going to destroy the other person. Oh, so I guess that's how the law works in action. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. And that is exactly why this case is such a, is so troubling, because of all the people that are going to want to take certain cases to trial and now have changed their minds. And conversely, there's certain people who are going to say, the fact that you're accusing me, I'm going to accuse you of defamation. You got to prove that I did this? Well, I'm going to accuse you of defamation. And it's going to cause a whole different legal landscape as a result, probably favoring moneyed men in general. I don't know if that's a overgeneralization. Stephanie says, I'm listening, but I'm cooking. Good luck with the cooking. So most conversations I saw and heard about facts and evidence were so poorly argued, felt like a bad joke. One of them was, I didn't see any tears. It's like, can't you see very well, or how did you not see that? I saw that. How did you not see that? Did you see that someone said there weren't any, so that's how you know there weren't any? Could you maybe clean your glasses, or is your vision okay? Someone says it was photoshopped, so like the video where you actually, like the original live feed is photoshopped, which is impossible, but nevertheless, it's idiotic things like that actually gain traction, and somebody makes 1 million views and the whole thing is just not even logical. Anyway, and so while all of this is going on, I was sort of thinking, it's almost as if one's got to redefine what a fact is. Like, do you know what a fact is? Like, do you understand the difference between a fact and something else? Do you know what that is? And then also explain what constitutes evidence. You know what evidence is? Now, if you say there's no evidence, then you kind of got to say, well, there's no exhibits. Like Amber came to court and she just didn't have any exhibits. She did have exhibits. There is evidence. The question is the evidence convincing? And so the jury decided, no, it wasn't. So every single exhibit that the jury saw, so every time they saw Amber's face and they said, I think that's fake. I think there's makeup there. Next one. I think that's fake as well. I think there's makeup there. Again and again and again. When the makeup artist said it looked like she's been headbutted, I think she's part of the conspiracy. Next one. So you can't say there's no evidence. You can say, I'm not convinced by the evidence. That's a totally different argument. So in a world of shifting realities, fact and fiction are interchangeable, and a mountain of evidence doesn't become a molehill, it simply ceases to exist. That's where we are with the internet right now. It's not like this mountain of evidence, I actually only just, let's look at that. No, the mountain's just gone. And that's literally what Camille Vasquez asked the jury to do. She said, either you believe in the whole mountain or you believe in none of it. Well, the actual legal argument was, if you believe in one element, you don't have to believe in all of it or none of it. You can believe in some of it. And if you believe in some of it, Amber wins. And the fact that the jury said that we don't accept that this was a hoax, but nevertheless found in Johnny's favor, to me is like, I don't understand that contradiction really. I just don't understand it. I would have been actually happier if they didn't give Amber the 2 million, because it just doesn't make any sense to think that way. And I think that's going to be a strong part of the appeal from Amber Heard's team, is that the jury's verdict simply doesn't actually make sense. And I'm not the only person who says that. It's not like sour grapes, it doesn't make sense. I'm saying logically, legally, it's just bizarre. Anyway, so this is the quote I want to quote from Slate magazine. Quote, "The war of the truth, however, was already lost. As long as the trial dragged on, a tsunami of distortions and disinformation about the litigants, their lawyers, witnesses, and the judge surged through social media and the court of public opinion, engulfing any real facts emerging from the court of law. In no way did this trial do what defamation law is supposed to, protect anyone's reputation." And that disregard for basically everything, the truth, evidence, and the trial itself makes where we are right now a very, very dangerous place, because it means you can make up whatever reality you want. And if you make it up in a way that gets enough people on board, well, then there you go. There's your power. So all you need is a opportunist that can ring the right bells, and that's going to be reality for a lot of people. And somebody said, I think it was Voltaire, said, if you are convinced by absurdities, you will be convinced to do atrocities. And that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. That's where we are now. But I think you must think about those words, opinion engulfing real facts. Opinions are currently engulfing reality. People's opinions about stuff is currently engulfing reality. This is beyond this case. This is our world. And we humans even agree, if we humans even agree on reality, if we can't even agree on reality, like in this case, we can't even agree what happened. And then everything Amber said is a hoax. Well, in the UK, a judge says it's not. So just in terms of that, there's not an agreement there. So if we can't even agree on reality, and this is a kind of legal reality, then I think we deserve to be undone by reality. If we can't agree with what's going on around us, then we actually deserve what's coming to us. And we've already had Corona. There's war starting in Europe, but we're still bickering about, is it real? Why should I wear a mask? I don't want to pay more for my gas, whatever it is. While we're bickering about reality, reality is advancing, right? Reality is advancing. Choices, Nick would make an excellent lawyer. Thanks for that. When I studied at university, I actually took an aptitude test, and they had me, lawyer was like by far number one, and then like number two, but a long way down was journalist. And so I became a writer of books, also a journalist, but a writer of books writing about the law, which I think was the right answer. I did study law, but becoming a lawyer in South Africa just seemed not the right thing. Let's go on to the next one. The jury agreed with Johnny Depp. That's the next one. And this is from a fantastic article in The Guardian that I'm sure a lot of you may have read. Do you guys want me to put a link to it? It's by Moira Donegan. I'm not sure if that's an Irish name. I've been to a place called Donegal in Ireland. I don't know if Donegan is sort of related to that. But this is a really good article if you haven't read it. I'm still kind of chuffed that my ex-partner in crime, Lisa Wilson's in chat. I think I saw that The Cut had a good article too saying TikTok has got their wish. I mean, I just think you can't do better than saying this was a trial by TikTok. I don't think you can do better than that because it's so absurd and so absurdly true, right? Ellie B is getting a bit agitated, says, did Amber lie on the stand or not? I think when she, for example, when she said she's never photoshopped a photo, I didn't believe that. And I must say, I'm someone who's been in true crime a long time. I'm very careful about calling someone a liar. I know a lot of people in social media really don't give a crap about it. She lied, whatever, exclamation mark. I'm quite careful about it because you can get sued for making absolute statements, certainly if you can't prove them, right? Thanks a lot, Terry. Terry says we are in a crisis of consciousness. I think that's a great description. Someone else called it a cultural war zone. Someone called it that as well. Let me just read what you said. We are in a crisis of consciousness. Technology is exposing our social engineering flaws. Future humans will judge our current actions. Yeah. I wonder what the future society will be like, or will there just be smoke? Will they be looking on a derelict landscape? Because the way we have this appetite to destroy one another with such sort of salivating cruelty makes you wonder how civilized we are. You know, how civilized are we in 2022? KD says a cultural abyss. Thought Criminal says, so anyway, somebody asked, do you think Amber lied on the stand? My answer to that is, I know how you want me to answer it in a yes or no. I would rather just answer by saying I didn't believe her when she said that one particular image was photoshopped. But there were other instances as well where I thought that wasn't very believable. I don't believe that part. Having said that, there were quite a few instances where I did believe her. For example, I did definitely believe her when she spoke about the first time. This is just my impression. This is my response. When she spoke about the Why No Forever tattoo and she laughed, and then she was struck and she was on the carpet and she was like, did he just do that? Either that was really well acted or it was, or it had like the ring of truth. But certainly when I saw that, I thought that's pretty powerful. So if there were things I didn't believe, there were also things I did believe. I think I found it quite hard to sort of, when Johnny Depp was testifying, he made a lot of absolute statements and he spoke at length without really saying anything, which I thought was weird. What was also interesting was the way Amber was shut down constantly by Camille Vasquez. It's like, can't you let her speak? But like constantly shut down, whereas Johnny would sort of speak and speak and speak and speak. There was a very aggressive, assertive position from Johnny Depp's counsel, possibly in service of this Darvo strategy, compared to the far more I don't know, just by comparison, less aggressive questioning from Amber's team. Okay, so I just want to go into this a bit further. So this is an excellent article from Moira Donegan, and she's from the UK. And I often find that that's the case, that you get this analysis that's not even in America, that the British folks seem to be more prepared to sort of stick their necks out. So this is where somebody in Britain said the verdict made by an American jury in Virginia was bizarre, strange, illogical, and unjust. Everything that I've said. Bizarre, meaning just the whole thing, like how much money, oh, we forgot to put that in. Must we talk about this headline? Yes, of course you do. Strange, like they came back 10 minutes later. Is that how quick it takes just to make somebody owe $10 million? Oh, just like that. Okay. Illogical, that's what I thought. Illogical in many ways. And then ultimately unjust. It's ultimately unjust. That's this person's viewpoint here. She says, this is quoting from the article, on Wednesday, the case's verdict came in, finding that Heard did indeed defame Depp, acting with malice when she described herself as a victim of DA. Bizarrely, the same jury found that one of Depp's, this is what she's saying is bizarre, bizarrely, the same jury found that one of Depp's lawyers defamed Heard when he said that her account was a hoax. What I find really interesting is, so when I started getting attacked on my own channel, people would say, this has got nothing to do with the British case. This is an American case in America, totally different. And yet in the verdict, it's like, well, your lawyer said something in the Daily Mail, which is a British publication, and it was in the run-up to the British trial. So it was in 2020, statements that were made in the Daily Mail, and then the trial happened, I think, in July 2020. So it was absolutely relevant. The other thing that I thought was quite weird is like, did Amber Heard actually commit defamation by tweeting? Right. So in other words, you say, look, what she said in the open-ed is not really that bad. She didn't mention his name. But the worst part of the op-ed is the, did I say open-ed? The worst part of the op-ed is the title. Well, she didn't come up with a title. So then you say, it doesn't matter. She tweeted it. So did she commit defamation that's worth 10 million because she tweeted something? And I think that should give you some pause when you tweet something. Do you think you should be sued for $5 million, $10 million, $20 million because you tweeted a headline, but it later turns out that it's not accurate? Because all of us are using social media all the time. So by that standard, shouldn't you, all of you guys, all of us, shouldn't you be, can we go through your social media right now and see if you've tweeted a headline that's actually proved in the fullness of time? Remember, this was like 4 years ago, to not be accurate, right? So can we go through your social media and see if we can find something that's not accurate? Okay, now you're going to be sued for defamation because you tweeted something, not something you wrote, something you basically retweeted or you put the link there. So now it's not that Amber wrote the op-ed, but that she tweeted a link to the op-ed. That's the defamation. Oh, so it's actually taking a shot at social media, isn't it? It's taking a shot at Amber Heard's social media. And if you take that as a measurement, what about your use of social media and my use of social media, where I'm pretty sure you've been a lot less unambiguous, saying you're a liar, you're a this, you're a that, to all sorts of public figures. What do you think about that? Louise says future society are going to be lonely. Heather Turner says, yeah, how weird was that he didn't show up for the verdict? His fans showed up in literal hordes just to have a chance to glimpse him coming and going. Maybe, I wonder whether the fact that he didn't show up influenced the jury. Maybe the jury were going to give him 20 million, and they were like, well, he's not here, let's make it 10 million. Baby Boss, many of the audio between Amber and JD convinced me that she's that. Okay. To me, where I've got a bit of a problem with the whole thing is she's recording him and he's recording her, but ultimately they both contrived scenarios. So if she's recording him, it's when he's triggered and upset and whatnot, and she's going to be trying to get the best recording, right? And vice versa, right? So to me, the recordings are sort of not as conclusive as maybe a lot of you guys think. It is a kind of a bait and switch situation. I'm going to bait you and then play it in court, right? That to me is not evidence in the way that evidence should be. To me, evidence is photographic evidence. So was there any evidence of broken furniture, of injury? Was there any evidence of broken injury, right? And I think some people will say no. Now, I sat in court, I didn't see one exhibit where there was any injury. Okay, that's interesting. In fact, the injury that we saw was where someone actually lost a body part, right? So whatever you say about what is going on, the whatever was going on was so severe that somebody actually lost a body part. That to me doesn't seem like it's worth giggling about, or that it's not a big deal. I mean, I don't know how many people have been in marriages and then they get divorced, but they don't lose a body part during the period of the run up to the divorce, right? They emerge with their body parts unsevered, right? So the fact that that's taking place means something really, really dysfunctional is taking place. For me, the unspoken narrative here is the drug narrative. Nobody cares about it. It's not a big deal. So what? And paranoia from the drug narratives I know is very, very real. It's very, very real. Anyway, let's go back to this. So again, it's this article from The Guardian, quote, "The verdict came after a trial that was televised, an extremely rare situation for proceeding that concerns allegations of DV, which was subject to almost inescapable media coverage, nearly all of it in favor of one litigant, even as the jury was not sequestered. The strange, illogical, and unjust ruling has the effect of sanctioning Depp's alleged mistreatment of Heard and of punishing Heard for speaking out about it. It will have a devastating effect on survivors who will be silenced now with the knowledge that they cannot speak about their experiences at men's hands without the threat of a ruinous libel suit. In that sense, women's speech just became a lot less free." That's really well said. The thing that I think is really worth emphasizing there is the thing that you would not even think to emphasize, which is inescapable media coverage, which is if you are a juror and you are navigating your little life and you're like, okay, you can go home now. Please don't do any research. Okay, don't worry, I won't. Going home now. And so you step out of the courtroom and you turn on your phone, but there's inescapable media coverage. No, I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm sorry, but it's inescapable. It's inescapable. And you've got 10 days to try and escape it. You're not going to escape it. I'm saying 10 days, but in the hiatus of the trial. You've got 3 days before your verdict, but it's inescapable. Not only is it inescapable for you, it's inescapable for your family, right? Even if you said, like I said earlier in this episode, even if you said, I'm committing to doing my job, I care about justice, I'm committing, but you've got your phone and you want to look at a YouTube video about cooking or about a movie trailer. I want to watch Top Gun Maverick movie trailer. And then YouTube gives its recommendations. Amber Turd, fake tears. And you didn't ask to see it, but it's right there. This is what the internet's saying. Sorry, I didn't ask to see it. I'm innocent. Yes, but you saw it because it's inescapable. And all of it in favor of one litigant. And so how can you say the jury is not tainted? So it's a real problem. How do you protect juries from this? Can you take away their phones for 6 weeks? I think there is a potential way to do it, which is you give them their phones and then you tell them that when you're in trial, at the, like each day, we're going to take your phones and we're going to do an analysis on your phones. We're going to check. In other words, we have the right to, in order to make sure that this trial is run properly, we have the right to your metadata. We have the right to look at what you've been talking about and discussing, right? And maybe that's something that can be part of the whole legal process is either you give up your phone completely, you give it up, or you say, I want my phone, but I consent to my phone activities being monitored, right? I don't know what the law will do with that, but you can imagine if your interactions are being monitored, you would be even less mischievous and taking chances. But I even think if somebody said, I'm going to be watching you, we're going to look at your metadata, we're going to look at what you click on, even then you're not going to be able to avoid the inescapable media coverage. Because when you turn on your phone, like I say, you're going to get the algorithm. So you can't escape it. So even the most innocent juror is going to be indirectly affected. Does that make sense? And you can't just sort of, Lisa says courts need to address this. So you can't just kind of shrug and say, yeah, it's sort of something that's not great and we've got to learn to live with it. No, this is the new landscape. And, I hate to say this, but I don't know what kind of person Amber Heard is. I don't know how strong she is or her spirit. But there's certain people that have gone through that if they went through what she has gone through, would literally not survive it. In other words, they would literally have some kind of breakdown and even worse. And then whose responsibility is that? And would that then also be, let's shake our hands, that's exactly what we want in terms of the Colosseum, right? Because I've got to say, while this was going on, I was thinking, is she going to be able to handle this? You can make your jokes and so on, but is this kind of thing kind of survivable in terms of psychology? Is it survivable? Can you put all of this aside in your mind and somehow rebuild a life when it feels like the whole world is against you? And I can tell you, I obviously endured a fraction of all this, and it was really, really hard, right? So I took a position based on being authentic and just saying, this is how I see the law. There wasn't really that I favor Amber Heard or I favor Johnny Depp or whatever. It was basically just, the law seems pretty clear here. That was really my position. And people didn't like that. And so I took a lot of flack, and I had a really bad month in May for lots of reasons besides what was happening with my channel. There were a lot of personal reasons as well. And so I went through I went into a really dark place. And then it makes you wonder, how much more would it have been for her? Because it feels like if I say something about Amber Heard and you disagree with it, you obviously don't like Amber Heard and maybe you don't like me, but it's totally different if you are Amber Heard and you see trending hashtags that are trashing you day after day after day. And it seems like everybody hates you. It's quite hard to come back from that. Definitely quite hard to come back from that. And is that fair to go on trial and then to be broken as a person after that? And I think some of you will say yes, but I think another way of putting it is, if you got divorced, would it be fair that the person that you get divorced from leaves you a wreck, totally broken? It should be as painless as possible. It should be allow the legal process to take its route, and there shouldn't be a punitive damage just for going to court, Anyway, so the fact that they say inescapable media coverage, all of it in favor of one litigant, that's something I kind of wanted to speak to Lisa about, which is, I don't think I remember a single case that I've covered or that we've covered where you had 100% basically supporting one person. When we covered Oscar Pistorius, when we covered Jodi Arias even, Chris Watts, you can name all of these cases, Casey Anthony, there was always a small fraction who was sort of on the fence or kind of supportive of choice. Thanks a lot for that. Thank you, from New Zealand. Thanks. I don't know if you're following what I'm saying. There was always a fraction that was on the other side, that was kind of the opposing team, if you will. And this is the first time I've come across a case that it's like basically 100% Johnny Depp, 0% Amber Heard. If you want to say it's not 0%, let's say it's 1%, but it's not the kind of fraction you normally see. And so you kind of got to wonder what is going on here. Is this is social media this monster, or is it also kind of to some extent a monster that's been manufactured? Are there aspects of the social media that have been constructed to create this social media machine? That's not really a good way of putting it. The social media monstrosity that is the way that it is. I suspect that there's some PR, there's some bots and stuff, and I don't think this was properly dealt with at trial, nearly as strongly as it should have been. It was dealt with, and it actually comes up in Amber Heard's arguments, right, in the court document. I'm not sure if that's the court document dealing with the British case, but I definitely have seen that. And I didn't think that was touched on nearly enough. And if it was, you could kind of look at the jury and say, let's say you're Ben Rottenborn, you could look at the jury and say, if you are going onto social media and somebody has poisoned the apple and you're going onto social media, you're going to be picking this poisoned apple, and somebody wants you to pick this poisoned apple, right? And you're talking then directly into this experience that they are having, and also into the user experience that has been designed for them to have. And if you think about it, did somebody come up with a plan, and did the plan execute perfectly? Which is, Johnny Depp is the big celebrity, Amber Heard is virtually unknown. Big star, small star, this is going to be a whitewash. Just control the social media narrative, and that's how you're going to win this. In the court, do the optics thing where he's the victim, he's such a nice guy, couldn't have done this. And it's as simple as that. And then rely on the ignorance of the jury to do the rest. They don't know the law and what things look like, and the pressure of it will do the rest. Is that what happened here? If it is, it reflects extremely badly on this notion, which now seems really naive, of did we sit 6 weeks through a farce, or did we sit 6 weeks through a court case? What was it? A court case or a farce? A court case or a performance? A court case or a circus? So anyway, this particular writer uses these words: strange, illogical, unjust ruling, also bizarre. Then she says, over the past 6 weeks, as the trial was live streamed online, many of those who have tuned in to watch have treated Heard with the same contempt that Depp did in his texts. And you know those texts that I'm talking about. Those texts, she says, I've heard somebody say, I couldn't come up with something that offensive if I tried. Anyway, someone says here, a broad consensus has emerged online that Heard must be lying about what happened to her. She's been accused of faking the photos of her injuries from what happened, painting bruises on with makeup. She's been accused of convincing the multiple witnesses who say Depp abused her to lie under oath for years. Now think about this. A lot of the same evidence that was used in this trial was used in the UK trial. So when the judge that ruled in the UK trial is shown a photo of Amber's face with some kind of mark or whatever, do you think that the judge goes, that's painted on? Do you think that's the judge's reaction, right? And also, if you have to put the judge and the juror side by side, right? And you give the judge this particular photo and you say, what do you see there? And the judge sees something. And you give the same thing to the juror and the juror goes, no, I don't see anything here. This is not evidence. What do you think is going on there? Do you think that the judge is not very smart? Do you think that the judge doesn't have experience in his field? What do you think the failure is on the one side or the other? What do you think that difference is? Because it's literally looking at exactly the same thing, the same photo, and the one person sees that someone's got a bruise on their cheek and the other one doesn't. And then I guess it becomes every single photo is a hoax. And so suddenly the mountain, as I say, the mountain disappears. The mountain of evidence disappears. So it doesn't matter how much evidence you've got, it's kind of gone. Do you remember Rottenborn's argument? I wonder if I've still got my notes here. Do you remember Rottenborn's argument? He said, if you didn't take pictures, it didn't happen. If you did take pictures, they're fake. If you didn't seek medical treatment, you weren't injured. If you didn't tell your friends, you're lying. If you did tell your friends, they're part of the hoax. I thought that was really, really well put. And apparently even that didn't really sway the jury either. Mr. Mom says the UK judge was wrong. 7 people agreed. Her lies sunk her ship. Okay. Still feeling quite strongly about that. Okay. It goes on to say, this is from the article, these conspiracy theories are unsupported by the facts of the case, but that does not stop them from spreading. Online, the case is taken on a heady mythology, and belief in Depp's righteousness persists independent of the evidence. And I think you'll actually see that some of the coverage has now gone further and further into conspiracy theory, as it inevitably does. You've said something, now it needs to be more extreme, now it needs to be more shocking. Over and over again, from my research, all of these articles say the same thing. Despite facts and evidence, in spite of what is known, the public and now the jury simply refuse to be guided by evidence. You've shown me evidence, doesn't mean anything to me. It's all a hoax. It's not evidence. It doesn't exist. Okay. It's kind of strange that if it was so simple that either side would just say, we're not even going to discuss it, it's all a hoax. So why even discuss it then? Why say this happened? Why the long, tedious trial if it's all a hoax? Why not just say, we're not going to even do a cross-examination, it's just a hoax, we don't need to do it. So if you look at the whole timeline, the 14 incidents, none of that's really necessary. What about the text? I'm a effing savage, just irrelevant. It's just random. Sorry about the monster, also just irrelevant. And so it literally becomes, I choose not to believe it, so the evidence then ceases to exist. Fact has now become fiction. Evidence, and you know, some of it, there's a bit of doubt around, like those photos that are sort of similar. But I don't know if you can say you've enhanced that photo, so the bruise that you're trying to enhance isn't there. Also, like if you say, I think she's crying, to say that all the times that she cried, all the times that she showed emotion, there just wasn't any. You know, there is such a thing as a person's baseline. And so if you're going to say that somebody lied about absolutely everything, a baseline shows the truth. So it's not, you very seldom see in true crime that somebody lies about everything. They may lie a lot, but there's often so much truth that's in there that the lie is plausible, right? In the Casey Anthony case, Zenaida Gonzalez, Zanny the nanny, a lot of people said Zanny is Xanax. Zanny is this a sedative or something. In other words, Zenaida Gonzalez may be a lie, but it's based on a truth that someone was taking care of Kaylee, and that someone was what they often refer to as Zanny. It's not a lie. It's a lie based on kind of a truth. I'm just saying hypothetically, right? And this black and white thinking where you say it's all a lie, it's just it's a little bit unreasonable. Terry Dean says she just took things too far. Yeah, so that I find is also a really interesting argument where you say the bruise isn't bad enough. The broken furniture isn't bad enough. To me, and I must say, in a way, I agree with that, because from her descriptions, it was like, for example, the broken bed. I thought the bed was broken. I thought the bed was sort of lopsided, and then there's just a small little thing missing. So it did sound kind of exaggerated. But when you argue in that way and you say, okay, so I don't believe any of it, well, the fact is that she divorced him after just 15 months. Do you think she divorced him because it was great? If Johnny Depp is so great and she said so, and everyone wants to be with Johnny Depp, why did this woman leave him after 15 months? Was it because actually things were quite great? But that's your argument, was that things weren't really that bad. She didn't endure all of these things, so things weren't really that bad, so why did she divorce him? I've heard the counter-argument that actually he divorced her. No, actually she divorced him. She initiated the process. So why would she do that if things were so great? Does that make sense? That if I say that, does it make sense to you? Anyway, to me, the real issue isn't really Johnny's story or Amber's story. It's us. That to me is the real. Nisi says, "Chat, please keep it clean." That to me is the real insight, is who we've become as a society. That to me is the real story. And a lot of these articles say the same thing. That's my position. So in terms of the Guardian article, this is again quoting from it, another thing that's just a basic law 101 is keep your emotions out of the trial. Keep your emotions out of it. Use logic, use evidence, use facts. Do you think social media does that? I think social media pretends to do that. I think social media believes what it believes, and then it it harnesses and recruits facts or stories or information to support its thing. It's not the other way around. It's not. I always use, when I write my books and when I do my analysis, I let the people speak for themselves. I let the evidence lead me to wherever it goes, not the opposite. I don't kind of go, I think this is really what happened, and let's see if the evidence fits. Sometimes there's a little bit of that. In the Vicky White case, I thought, this kind of looks like she eloped with him. But then I didn't know anything about her and I didn't know anything about him. But that was my first thought. It looked like she'd made it possible for this guy to escape. I also was quite aware that she's older than him. She didn't really have family relationships. And that was my first thought. And then I thought, that's your bias. And in a way, it was a bias, but it turned out to be true. When we got to know them better, it turned out that she did have feelings for him, he did have feelings for her, and this was kind of an eloping situation. The thing is, even if you have a bias that's true, you need to pull it back and let the evidence first have its say. In other words, although I was right about it being an elopement, I needed to rein that back and say, let's first find out what kind of person she was. Let's first find out what kind of relationship or friendship they had, if any. Let's first find out what is going on. And then you can sort of let your intuition and emotions kind of start playing a role. First get the facts, first get the information, not the other way around. Not, this is my theory, well, let's bring in facts to support it. Anyway, the Guardian article writes also as follows, quote, in the service of this myth, any cruelty can be justified. When Heard took this, let me read that again. In the service of this myth, any cruelty can be justified. When Amber Heard took the stand, she became emotional and she recounted what Depp did to her, manipulated her, this and that, and so on. Afterwards, ordinary people, along with a few celebrities and even brands, and she names them, took to social media to mock or undermine Amber Heard. And this is the part where I must say, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And the fact that people were doing it, it's like, do you know what you're doing? You're undermining the justice system. You are interfering. You are being exceedingly judgmental, but ultimately you're disrespecting this process. It's not a game, but that's exactly what it became. And that game and that circus totally dominated the actual thing. It's actually become more important than the actual thing. And that may be great for you. And if you're a creator, great for me. Wow, I've got so many subscribers. Woohoo. It's not great for this world. You may have done a great job at getting credibility for yourself based on your nonsense, but the trial in a way has lost its credibility, and there's even the question of, have the jurors lost their credibility? Can the jurors be trusted? She goes on to say they took screenshots. This is folks out there. This is internet land. This is the mongrelized social media. Took screenshots of Amber's weeping face and made it a meme. Many performed mocking reenactments of her testimony, lip-syncing along as she recounted alleged incidents. The audio of her crying became a TikTok trend. This cruelty has now been joined in and compounded by the jury, who've gone beyond mocking her for telling her story and now declared that she actually broke the law by doing so. That's certainly her opinion on that, but I've got to say that it's the digital equivalent of the Colosseum, where I'm perfectly fine tearing this person to pieces. Do you even know who I am behind this avatar? And another thing that came up over and over and over and over again is the glee at which the people put these things together and the glee at which other people participate in that. And it's sort of made me wonder, have any of these people that are in the circus been bullied in high school? Like, or are they the high school bullies? Or does it just not matter? But if you had to do a statistical check, because that's kind of what it is. It's bullying, mocking, playing the fool. Have any of these people actually experienced this themselves? You know, and there is an aspect to this that feels like high school. It doesn't feel like a court case. If the jury went online, and saw the entire internet laughing at Amber Heard's BS in the way they would see it, if the jury went online and they saw Amber's mock-worthy testimony, who are they to believe it? So no matter who you were as a juror, if you went online, you'd kind of be like, I'm not quite sure what I saw, but I mean, everybody else has seen that she's totally not credible. So now I know what position to take. I mean, isn't the court of public opinion, in other words, social media, also known as the most credible news source in the world, in the kingdom? Social media is now more credible than mainstream news. Social media is now the new court. It used to be a trial by media is wrong. Now it's a trial by media is inevitable. And a trial by media, well, you just got to live with the result. Do you think that's going to stand? Do you think the law is going to tolerate that? Do you think the law should tolerate that? Do you think the highest court in the land should be the court of public opinion? Let me ask that question again. Do you think the highest court in the land should be the court of public opinion? Which is a kind of another way of saying, do you think 1 million laymen, 10 million laymen, 100 million laymen should be the judges of somebody in a given situation, right? In other words, it's almost like taking the jury. If you imagine that the jury did go online and the jury went, oh, okay, so that's what people are thinking. And you say, why don't we just make the court of public opinion the court? Why don't we let's just kind of make it like some of these sing-a-thons, you know, where people vote about who they like. And you just make the whole court thing social media. Okay, social media supports that. Okay, so that's justice. In other words, you transfer the expertise of the court to the layman. Is that what should happen here? Because that's literally what you're talking about. The case in the UK was decided by a judge, a guy who knows the law, a guy who's familiar with evidence, a guy who's familiar with the standards, a guy who's heard lots of arguments in his life, a guy who is probably quite intelligent. Should we say, no, thank you? We'd rather sort of hand it over to somebody else with their phone and they'll figure it out. Is that the way we need to do it? We need to do it. Is Lisa still here? Ando says, I felt super involved in the Jodi Arias case because of how televised it was and the online discourse around it. You know what has kind of happened? It's gone from being televised and there's a little bit of online as a peripheral to the televising is now like the peripheral side and the online side is the I've kind of come the full circuit. There's a time when I covered cases and I tweeted a case from beginning to end. So when I sat in on the Henry von Bredouw trial, a triple axe murderer, I would be sitting there and there would also be journalists sitting there and I would think, how can I add value to what they're talking about? And so I wrote books and I sort of tried to take it a bit further, but I was like doing this social media analysis of the trial while the trial was taking place. But there was also live streaming going on and TV and newspapers and so on. With the Oscar Pistorius, I think it was basically TV with an online component. Where we are now is the online component dwarfs any other coverage, right? The online component dwarfs that. And now it's also got an impact because that online stuff goes into the algorithm, and the algorithm finds its way onto your phone, which means it has an impact on you. No matter who you are, if you've got an internet connection and social media, it's going to have an impact. It's just a fact. Lady Gray says, why do people say victims aren't perfect when it comes to blah, 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 but he isn't allowed to not be perfect and still be a victim? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but what they're trying to say is if she did lie about X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean she lied about everything. So in other words, she doesn't have to be perfect. She doesn't have to have told the truth about every single thing. Actors embellish, so I wouldn't, the whole nature of acting is performance, enhancement, try and have some kind of compelling theatrics. If Amber Heard was guilty of that, and I'm sure she was, why wouldn't Johnny Depp have been? And if you think about it, Johnny Depp every day comes into court with glasses on, ponytail, rings, this whole paraphernalia. He's the only guy that's dressed that way. And you've got to kind of say, is that relevant? Is the fact that he's this big star relevant to the outcome of this case? Should it be? Should it be relevant? Or should the facts be relevant? Should the evidence be relevant? The other side to that story about the victim is, should a victim, when something happens to you, shouldn't you just walk away and get divorced? That almost never, ever happens because you're conflicted, because you do love the person. That's why you're in a relationship with them. So things aren't working out. And that's what I think people don't seem to understand with this case is there are times when she loved him, and then there were times when they argued in a horrible way, and then they were in love again. So it wasn't a very long marriage, 15 months. Feelings change. Situations change. The one's behavior changes. You get closer to one another. You forgive one another. You hope and you encourage, and things do improve. Then they don't improve again. Then you want to give up hope. Maybe you don't. And then there is some kind of breakthrough somewhere. And then overall, it's this up and down thing. And throughout it, there's love and hate, just like all relationships. Not like all relationships, but love and opprobrium. And then in that, there's still a sense of hope. Even when you break up with someone, you sort of wonder, could something still work here? And part of you wants that to happen, even against your better knowledge. This should be the end, but then you, out of weakness, you go back. It's not good for you, and you go back. And so who are you to judge that when you've done it yourself? That's what they're talking about in terms of not the perfect victim. And like, what are you talking about? Does the injury need to be so serious that, how many cases end with, in true crime, how many cases end with somebody that ends up dead? Is that going to then be convincing? You have the same thing, exactly the same thing in O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown. She also documented her injuries, and O.J. said, it's makeup. It's exactly the same thing. Apparently that jury believed that as well. The person I spoke to that was also in a situation, I said, did you document your injuries? And I think she said, I think she emailed it or something to someone, Not sure if there were photos, but in that sense it was documented. And not everyone is a excellent photographer, especially with a cell phone and selfies, that's going to come out in a way that's going to be convincing enough. There's a bruise, well, it's not dark enough. There's a mark on my face, well, it's not bloody enough. There's a tuft of hair pulled out, well, it's not enough. When is it enough? Once he says, I thought I failed myself, but now I know I didn't. Thank you, Nick. Thanks a lot, Onesie. Appreciate that. So I'm going to just go on through this article. So as I say, if the jury went online, so what does Lady Gray say? We can't destroy a man's career on that, but maybe some parts are true. Stephanie's back. Stephanie says, I cooked and ate. Lady Gray, I don't think Johnny Depp's career is destroyed. I mean, he's got so much support. Also, he's got his musical career, which seems to be continuing. The other thing about Johnny Depp's career, and this is just paying attention to some of the facts of the case, some of the details of the case. Apparently on the same day that the op-ed was published, so on the same day in the same newspaper, I think, when I say I think, it's based on, I remember this, but I could maybe be incorrect, so you can check my facts, but you'll remember this if I'm saying it right. Apparently the same day, in the same paper, the same day as the op-ed, was an article saying that he wasn't going to be cast in Pirates or something like that, that had been dropped. So you can really not make the argument that the op-ed led to that when it was already a fait accompli. Do you guys remember that? The other thing is, and comes back to getting to know people, you need to look at the trajectory of Johnny Depp's career. He was struggling with his movie career kind of before this took place. I wouldn't be surprised if the movie career that's stuttering and the frustration that comes out as a result of that couldn't have infected their relationships. In other words, if Johnny Depp was having a very successful career when he was with Amber, you can imagine that they would have been a lot happier. But the fact that he was kind of in one dud after another and she's doing quite well by comparison, that's going to make you feel a bit insecure. And I've often thought about that. If you've got two movie stars and one is absolutely beloved, they're both really good movie stars, but one's absolutely beloved, how does the other one feel about that? How do you not feel threatened, or if you're the man and the woman's more popular, emasculate, how do you not feel insecure? How do you not feel like, well, everybody loves you, how do they feel about me? How do you not make a comparison? I just want to touch on that movie history just so that you guys know. If you go to Wikipedia, it talks about 2012 to 2020 career setbacks. I didn't come up with that title. It talks about 2012 to 2020, and then that section is titled career setbacks. So in the exact decade that Amber Heard enters his life, his career goes through all of these setbacks. Is that her fault? Is that his fault? Whose fault is that? One of the career setbacks is the movie that he conjured, the Rum Diary. He acted as the principal character. That movie also didn't do very well. Whose fault is that? In 2012, when he met Amber Heard, he was like one of the world's biggest film stars. right? So there was only one way from there theoretically, and that was down, and that was where he went. In 2011, he signed a first look deal with Walt Disney, and the first movie he made was The Lone Ranger, 2013. That bombed, and that was horrible. He played Tonto. He had that horrible sort of crow on his head. There was a lot of sort of controversy with Native Americans and whatnot. Disney made $190 million loss on that. So whose fault was that? Wasn't that just like some movie stars' careers like go up and down, right? I don't know if you want me to go through the whole thing, but I mean, it's basically that whole decade, 8 years, was just filled with career setbacks. So I don't know how you can blame Amber for the end phase of that. I don't know. Where do you start blaming her and where do you stop blaming her? I don't know. It's easy to blame her, of course, but there are also other things going on. The Mordecai wasn't a great, it was a critical and commercial failure. That was 2015. London Fields, Depp appeared in that with Amber Heard. That was also a mess. That was mired in litigation. On and on and on and on. You have, I think, Alice Through the Looking Glass, the sequel, didn't do very well either. It lost 70 million. That was in 2016. Whose fault is that? Do you see what I'm saying? It's a lot of duds, one after the other. And probably that's going to put more and more pressure on the actor. Like, you need to fix this up. You need to deal with this. And it's going to make the actor uncomfortable. And where's that going to come out, right? Good to see Lisa still here. Lisa says, it's an important point in terms of this convo today. Legal teams use social media all the time to affect outcomes. Is that justice? Okay. Okay, so again, reading from the Guardian article, it says the trial has turned into a public orgy. While most of the vitriol is nominally directed at Heard, it is hard to shake the feeling that really it is directed at all women. This is this woman's perception. And in particular, all of those who spoke out about gendered this and that, plus the hashtag #MeToo movement. We are in a moment of virulent anti-feminist backlash, and the modest gains that have been in that area are being retracted with a gleeful display of victim blaming at a massive scale. There's that word gleeful again. Is there a word that better describes the giddy hatefulness directed at Heard? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that? Where people criticize her with a sense of giddy hatefulness. Like, I'm getting such a kick out of being as nasty as I possibly can. I'm laughing and I'm smiling, and it's so much fun doing this. I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying how much we can mock this person. And I'm going to look forward to doing it tomorrow as well, kind of thing. One nicely timed stab in Heard's back could win an opportunistic channel 10,000 free lunches. And the crueler, the better. The more hateful, the better. That's where all of this is going. The article goes on to say, for their part, Depp's fans seem to not so much deny Depp's the alleged things that he did, but to approve of it. I'm not really going to read this because it's pretty bad, but they basically say one TikTok video supporting Depp said, you know what, he could have killed you and he actually had every right. That's where it gets really, really dangerous, that kind of thing. Because you can get a person who's not quite right in their head, someone who's emotional, maybe someone's breaking up with him, someone's arguing with him, and maybe that person's had a bit to drink. and is seeing something like this being communicated on social media, and it's being reinforced and reinforced, and there's encouragement and there's cheering, and someone might say, I've actually every right to do this. I'm totally justified. And it might be a moment of weakness within a feeling of temptation in the true crime fabric, but it nevertheless opens those doors. It's not right. She goes on to say, in some ways, one could see the defamation suit itself as an extension of Depp's mistreatment of Heard, a way to prolong his humiliation and control over her. So what she's saying is, she imagines that there was something going on in the marriage, and this defamation suit is just an extension of that. That's her opinion. She says the only difference is that now the legal system and the public have been conscripted to take part. This seems to be at least partly how Depp sees it. In 2016, as their marriage broke apart, Depp texted his friend Christian Carino, vowing revenge against Heard. She's begging for global humiliation. She's going to get it. Now, I've got to say, I've read quite a lot of these articles. The timbre of it's the same. The tone is very similar. But the one word that I think is missing from the commentary of this trial is sadism. To take sadistic pleasure isn't just to be entertained. It's to feel glee. And it's not just to feel glee, but to simultaneously take pleasure in the undoing and destruction of another person. That's regardless of whether that person's guilty or not. Even if that person is guilty, we ought to be in a civilized place. Let me express this in a very unambiguous way. When the judge in the Jodi Arias case pronounced her verdict, if she got up and wagged her finger at Jodi Arias and kind of shook her head and kind of like mocked her and right in front of her, that would be totally inappropriate for a judge sentencing someone to life in prison without parole. In other words, it would be totally inappropriate for a judge in a court to take sadistic pleasure in sentencing someone who totally deserved to get the sentence they got. It would be totally inappropriate to do that. That's what we talk about. Emotion needs to be taken out of the process. It needs to be based on logic, on evidence, on facts, on cogent reasoning, on using legal precepts, on using the law. The law's been there for a very long time, right? And instead what's happening is this emotional thing. And again, if you compare this to the Colosseum, those people in the Colosseum are there to take sadistic pleasure in the physical destruction of somebody or something. They want to see blood. They want to see pain. They want to see all that stuff, right? They want to see it. The crueler, the better. And we are now exactly the same, doing exactly the same thing. Amber Heard isn't a character. She's a person. Johnny as well. Johnny's not a character. He's not Captain Jack Sparrow. He's a person who's got a private life, right? Somebody said something that was so true, which is that probably the fact that people are dealing with this in this way reflects on us, because if we don't believe this person, it means it's kind of an indictment on ourselves. It means if this person isn't the hero and we can't recognize it, then neither are we. We aren't heroes in our own story. We are flawed. We are flawed and frauds ourselves. We don't like to think of it that way. Terry Dean says, lest we not forget that our perception of reality is being curated by information control. It depends. It depends on how strong your identity is. If you've got a strong identity, and I believe I do, when you're researching a story, are you able to control that whole world and create narratives that come out of your mouth and out of your mind and out of your hands, even though there are all these strange forces at play? Are you able to filter things in and out? Not everyone can. Not everyone is able to look at all the information, distill it, and say, this is how it makes sense. This is the legal aspect. These are the various narratives. These are the dynamics. This is the identity of this person. This is the media narrative. This is the PR narrative. This is the counter narrative. This is the legal narrative. Are you able to see those things? Or do you just get lost in the noise of it? Do you just get taken with the tide of momentum? Yeah, no, those sick names, that's for sure. So how sadism works is the greater the cruelty, the worse, and the worse the destruction, the better. In other words, the more sadistic you are, the more you revel in the mockery of a person. I don't think the word toxic really captures the level of sheer sadistic sickoness we've seen online over the past 6 weeks. You know what I'm talking about? And so my complaint, the thing that's troubling me, my worry is that we become a sadistic society. And this case shows it. This case shows it in horrible, horrible detail. And the scope and scale of it is more massive than we could have imagined. Just how much sadists live amongst us. Just how much sadism is totally unhinged, right? Just how much cruelty people have got inside of them that they are very happy to unleash on somebody else. Day after day, again and again and again, even with everybody watching, this absolute incessant appetite for it. Is it any wonder then if our society is so sick that our society has got such shitty standards that this is the outcome? Why wouldn't the jury condone what the rest of society does? Why wouldn't the jury be afraid of what society might do to them? I'm sad to say there are even people on my platform, a platform that's designed for people who believe in higher levels of truth. Lisa will know this. In fact, I think I was writing with Lisa when someone described our writing as the most authentic voice in true crime. We've always pursued higher levels of truth, better standards of justice, plain meat and potatoes authenticity, but it seems like to be authentic now is like a revolutionary act, especially online. Even people on my platform, people that know me and know my standards, can't seem to hide the enjoyment of Amber's humiliation. And that makes it feel like we really are lost. We really are lost. Stephanie asked me to put a link to this article in the description in the chat, so I'll quickly do that. I have actually done it, but I'll put it back again. I see we are up to 44 no's, so it's pretty much stuck at that level. I really don't think the 56% who say you could stay off social media, I doubt whether if you were asked to stay off social media just tomorrow, just for, what is tomorrow, Friday? Yeah. If someone asked you to just have social media the whole of tomorrow, I doubt whether you could do it. I think even if you looked at your phone, you'd be exposed to social media. So even if you had the best intentions, you'd nevertheless be exposed. Lucy says, how was it not obvious Amber lied? No one's saying that. I don't know if anyone's saying that Amber spoke the truth the entire time. There were obvious instances, I think. For me, the one with the two photos where she was asked, did you Photoshop them or something? Or did you enhance them, right? And Ando says, I can't go a day without social media, to be shamefully frank. Okay. I see I've been up for 2.5 hours. Do you guys want to let me go, or do you want me to go through one more thing? It's another Washington Post article. Katerina says that was a total hoax with, I think, 5 exclamation marks. So just to let you guys know, the rules for this are live. Not that I really ever use rules, but the rules are that we don't really want to be a team. We don't kind of want to be, I'm team Johnny, or I'm not even team Amber. It's just, let's try and discuss the evidence of the case. No name calling, if you can do that. No all caps, no swearing, and try and limit your exclamation marks to just one. That's kind of the rules. One of the questions we asked is, how do we prevent juries from being tainted? Anyone have any suggestion for that? So this is another Washington Post. Yeah, but Terry, you can't sequester someone for 6 weeks. It's like solitary confinement. The Washington Post speaks here about, first of all, let me just read it. Quote, some cheered for what they saw as a victory for men who are wrongly accused, while the decision struck others as a cruel statement on the rights of victims to speak out. While the details of the case may have enraptured the millions who watched it, Law and Crime Network alone saw more than 3 million viewers tune into its live stream of the verdict and saw the social media vitriol directed at Heard. It leaves behind serious questions about the future of victims in a scenario like this and their willingness and ability to come forward, and perhaps their legal options. So even this article is sort of looking at how this case may actually change the legal landscape, that new laws may actually be put into place and new systems of coverage as a result of this carnival and the circus that has surrounded this case. Don't think this case is just going to come and go and things are going to be the same. People are going to learn from what has happened here and seeing what has been unacceptable, and they're going to try and sort it out. They're going to try and redirect the court to be inside the courtroom and not outside the courtroom. I also think the thing that was going on when Johnny Depp arrives in court and you've got fans screaming, if I think about the Patrick Frazee case and to some extent even Barry Morphew, you had strict, and these are obviously criminal trials, you had strict protocols where photos can't be taken, people have got to stay away, and so on. That might be necessary in the future to have much stricter control over courtrooms and court processes in the future. Also, things like access to your phone, and also things like you don't have a 10-day break in the middle of a trial, and you don't have a 3-day break before, like on the one side of the verdict and the other. That to me just is kind of asinine, really. It also says here, the trial sometimes featured graphic testimony that was hotly debated by viewers and legal experts. Yeah, I'm not quite sure who the legal experts were. I didn't really hear too much from legal experts. I'm talking about, anyway. I don't know if I really want to take us any further. I've kind of said my piece. Yeah, so basically, just as a conclusion to this, the Washington Post describes what happened on Wednesday. It's just like 2 days ago. The courtroom was filled almost to capacity Wednesday, though it was quieter than the days during the trial when Depp fans packed the seats. The article goes on to say, let me put a link to chat just so you can see what I'm talking about. It's a really good article. When the verdict was ready, some of the actor's loyal followers were in attendance, but much of the crowd was composed of curious onlookers. The reading of the first question from the verdict drew soft gasps, but the crowd remained mostly silent afterward, adhering to Judge Penny Azkarate's warnings about outbursts. Did I say that right? That was also quite interesting, and that happens a lot in courtrooms where the judge says, I'm not going to tolerate any like cheering or any kind of emotional. When I read the verdict, you must remain quiet, otherwise you get kicked out of the courtroom. And you can imagine none of that's taking place in social media. There's just that sort of hamster wheel of chatter going on. And it's just a little bit sad that that's where our society is right now. I don't know. Just we seem to have become gone from being civil to uncivilized, and social media seems to be the reason for that. As my friend Lisa said, social media has destroyed us as a society, and I would add to that, it's still destroying us. How do we stop this from happening? Yeah, she is appealing. She is appealing. After the verdict, Amber left the courtroom. She went out of the back entrance, and a woman was heard shouting, "Liar, liar," at her. That's basically the world into which Amber moves now. Everywhere she goes, that kind of abuse is what she's going to suffer. That kind of, and somebody said, this is all her fault. She brought these charges. She wrote the op-ed in 2018. 4 years later, this case has gone to trial. Johnny chose to put her on trial after losing the trial in the UK and the appeal. What I think may be the dynamic at work here, it's just a theory, is that whatever happened in their marriage happened and it was sort of done. But then an opportunistic journalist read the divorce paper and, wanting to tell a good story, wrote his story in the Sun, but using what was set out in the divorce paper, and described Johnny Depp as a wife beater. Then Johnny Depp sued the Sun and this journalist. This is the part that I think hurt Johnny Depp, meaning he didn't like it. Also made Johnny Depp angry was the fact that rather than simply suing the newspaper and simply suing the journalist, Amber got involved. Amber stood up for what was said there. I don't think Johnny liked that. In other words, Johnny probably thought, expected, or felt entitled to winning that case, winning, or whatever it was. He probably felt like her stepping in was something that he didn't like. And so now he was going to, it's a question. After that, did he want some kind of payback? Because bear in mind, the article, the op-ed, predated the trial against the Sun. So why didn't he first sue Amber? Why did he only sue Amber now? Why did he wait 4 years, right? Think about it like that. In other words, was the thing that Amber really did wrong in Johnny's eyes? That's a question again. was the thing that really upset him. The fact that she inserted herself into this court case in the UK and kind of humiliated him because he lost it, right? Bear in mind, he went to court because the article that this was all about was saying this wife beater shouldn't be allowed to act in this movie, right? And he didn't like that. It's like you're being accused of something and directly that's being linked to you shouldn't be allowed to work, right? And so I don't want that. And then Amber actually testifies basically in support of the son and against Johnny. And so doesn't Johnny then say, now I'm going to get you. Now I'm going to, you've stood out, you've kind of stuck your neck out. Now X, Y, Z. Doesn't that make sense? As the reason for this particular trial. He didn't take the Washington Post to trial. He didn't take the guy who changed the headline to trial, just Amber. Lady Gray says Johnny sued her for the op-ed in 2019. Court cases take a good while before they go to the jury. No, that's true. It's true. Okay, it's a fair point there. I'm not sure if the case in the UK just go on a much faster conveyor belt. I don't know. I'm just saying, did Amber testifying against him play a factor in all of this? Because I mean, he must have known. Anyway, yeah. Okay, I think I'm about done. Is Lisa still in the house? I really do want to do a chat with her maybe tomorrow if it's possible, or even over the weekend. By the way, Lisa's based in California. She was my co-author for a couple of books. But anyway, I'll let you guys know. Obviously, if you see a video, you'll know what the sort of situation is. Stephanie just says sorry for that. Anyway, don't worry, guys. Bria says she had to go. Bria, I think you must also go. Bria's in France, and I think you need to get some sleep, Bria. So anyway, the case isn't over yet. It looks like there is going to be an appeal. I've got no idea how she's going to pay for any of this. I don't know whether she's going to get some kind of donation from any of her ex-boyfriends. I don't know what Jeff Bezos thinks about the whole thing because it was published in his newspaper. So the money aspect definitely is an interesting thing. Also, how much is she going to make from Aquaman 2 ultimately? One wonders. But I hope you found some of the coverage interesting. I just highlighted a couple of the headlines. I really thought the Davo thing's really, really interesting. This tried and tested legal strategy where you invert the whole thing, turn yourself into the victim, and obviously deny kind of thing. Richard says she will never let her obsession with Johnny go. Okay. Anyway, I just want to thank you guys for pretty much keeping things neat and tidy. I didn't really see too many kind of unmentionable comments. Alicat says Amber was already paid for Aqua. That's maybe true, but I would imagine some of it is proportional to how the movie does, so success. She might get a share, whether it's 0. whatever %, but she may get some kind of share in that. I don't know. Obviously, if it's a rip-roaring success, who knows what happens then. I must say, Spirit of 1776 says, incredible analysis, thanks. I must say, I feel a little bit differently about Johnny and Amber, like never working again. I've heard people say Johnny will never work again. I've heard people saying Amber will never work again. I don't think so. I think part of the flip side of the social media madness that we live in is that people have got very short attention spans, very short memories, and I think a clever script that, like Tom Cruise played against character in like Jerry Maguire. I think a clever script could kind of make hay out of some of the, the fact is people paid attention. That's the fact. And you can argue that it was not good attention, but I would argue that that they know the world knows these people. And speaking for myself, I didn't even know who Amber Heard was. I'd actually seen her in 2 movies, at least. I'd seen her in The Rum Diary. I'd seen her in Aquaman, and I'd seen her in The Stand. But I didn't know that I knew her. I didn't know that her name was Amber Heard. Now she at least has that name recognition. You might say it's for a bad thing, but she could easily play kind of a character that you love to hate. Remember Joan Collins used to play those roles. She could play a role where she's a villain, and it would kind of slot in. Johnny could play. I'm not sure what he would do, but yeah. So I'm not convinced that their careers are over, and I think a lot of this is much ado about 2 pretty spoiled movie stars. To me, it's far more worrying what's happening to our legal system and what's happening to us. That's far more worrying. That social media is destroying us as a society. We're becoming uncivilized. We don't know what reality is. We don't know what facts are. We don't know what evidence is. We don't know what reality is. And there are so few people standing up for that as well. I don't claim to be like the all-knowing, but how many channels did you see on YouTube that weren't pro Johnny Depp? That just had a different view. And the answer to that is because you incentivize to take that view, right? So I just want to make one last reminder to my subscribers watching this video, not live, right? Not live. Since I put this video up, so obviously if you're watching right now up until almost 3 hours, thank you for being here. But since I put this video up, my channel has gone from 86,400 and something subscribers to under to like 86,300. So just in putting this video up about what we've been talking about, I've been punished, I've been penalized, I guess I've been mocked, whatever. So if you appreciate what I'm doing, if you appreciate me standing up the way that I am, please use that thank you icon. And if you are grateful, please express it. Yeah, I see I've just lost maybe about 20 subscribers, not the end of the world, but every time I do put up a video like this, it slips down. And I don't know, it's quite curious. Thanks a lot, Val. Thank you very much. But that is part of the mission of True Crime Rocket Science, is to be authentic. And I've endeavored to do that. I've also endeavored to, before the trial outcome is known, basically say, this is what I think is reasonable, rational, lawful, and fair, right? Ricardo, thanks a lot. Goal, thanks. And so I've always felt that. As long as I've written about true crime, I've felt if you're going to be a legitimate expert, if you're going to be a credible commentator, it doesn't help coming when the jury is known. You must come before it's known, put your money where your mouth is kind of thing. Thanks a lot, not there yet. I don't mean literally money, but put your kind of nail your colors to the mast and kind of say, this is what I know based on my knowledge, my expertise, my understanding of the case, and this is where I stand, and then see what happens. And I did that, for example, in the Oscar Pistorius case, the very first case that I covered, where the judge decided that he was only guilty of manslaughter and he was only going to be given effectively a 10-month sentence. And I said, this is not right. And at that stage, I was totally new to true crime, totally unknown to true crime, a total, like, who's this? Like other journalists who saw me didn't know who I was. But I wasn't new to the law. I wasn't new to thinking about any of these things. The victim was also someone I knew, Reva Sienka, but no on Facebook. And my thing was just, I want to know what her story is. I want to tell her story. Why are you shutting down her story? And also in her case, no one came forward because he was the big celebrity and she was nothing. So nobody came forward. So everyone sort of towed the line. So initially, the whole pendulum swung his way. And I said, this is not right. This is not right. And it took quite a long time before the case was eventually got to the Supreme Court level. And then Oscar was finally found guilty of murder. And then he was given a much harsher sentence. But a lot of the people in the beginning, I would say the majority, talking about legal experts, journalists, the public, thought that they knew what was going on in the case, thought that they understood the case, thought that with the whole world watching, we had the right outcome, and it wasn't. And so that's a lesson I certainly learned, which is I pay attention to what I'm seeing. I pay attention to what other people say in order to be well informed. But I'm really not afraid to look at what I'm seeing and go, this makes sense to me. This is what I'm seeing. This is what the law says. And this is what makes sense. And to repeatedly ask, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Etc. And in this case, Johnny Depp, it doesn't make sense, right? If it makes sense to you, I don't know, maybe you've been on social media too long, maybe you're reading the wrong articles, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's the problem. But maybe it's a case that social media is becoming a bit too powerful and is drowning out some of the sensible analysis that needs to be there. In the same way that I'm being drowned out. In the same way, whenever I put up a video with my analysis, it's not overtly that let's cancel him. That's not right. And the fact that it was so vicious and mean and consistent made me realize what a force it is in this particular case. I mean, I didn't cover the Johnny Depp case very much, but definitely felt something was up in the social media machine that's not been there before. Some kind of toxic apple being added to the brew. Anyway, that's it from me. I want to thank my mods, Stephanie especially, also Bria, Nisi. I don't know if Jean is still here, but thanks to all the mods. And then also thanks to all the members, Thought Criminal, Terry Dean, Choice. You've always been so good to me in my comments. Just whenever I see your comments, it makes me smile and feel kind of good. And good to see you as well. And then the subscribers, thanks to you guys. Also, thanks for all the super chats. I am going to try and get Lisa to come on soon. Lisa's from California. It was Lisa who said this case is the poster child for the state that the world is in right now, but also the poster child for the state of America right now. And we're going to get her take on how do we prevent juries from being tainted? Like literally, it's a question with a very difficult answer. How do we actually navigate the future of court cases given this monstrosity, this inescapable monstrosity that social media now has proved itself to be? What are we going to do? So we're going to talk about that. So maybe, Kathy says people don't think for themselves. I would just say not enough. You need to think for yourself. You need to look at something and say, do I agree with that? Does that make sense to me? And see what you think. Thought Criminal says, when you know, you know. Okay. Thanks, guys. Timmy's at my feet, I think. No, he's not. It's actually my jacket. Shall I see if I can get Timmy here just before we hit 3 hours? Timmy, come. Come, boy. Come, Timmy, come. Not hearing anything. Timmy, come. Come, boy. Here he comes. Here he comes. Come, boy. Shake it off. Shake it off. Come. Come, boy. Come. Come, boy. Come. So it was very cold here. So Timmy was obviously very snug. But I thought, let's end off with a little wave from Timmy. Stephanie, thanks very much for making it. I'll see you Saturday, Stephanie. Terry says, I love how your eyes go up as you listen for his clicks. Okay, there we go. Hey? I took him for quite a late night walk, but at least I took him for a walk. Anyway, it's really cold here, which means it must be warming up on your side of the world. Thanks for tuning in. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. Timmy will also see you next time. Okay. Okay, cheers, guys.